And welcome everybody. I'm Vanessa Ehrlich, Director of Lifelong Learning at Macomb-Soleil Lakeside. I am so happy to see you all here. And again, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Jay Futterman because he knows our speaker.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. Good to see everybody here this morning, the weekend before Earth Day. So we've got a whole lot going on, and one of the big highlights of our programming here is having Dee Herman with us today. Dee is coming to us from the Jewish Earth Alliance. She's a rabbinic pastor, spiritual director, a saging mentor, and a retired hospice chaplain. She's been a lifelong environmental activist inspired by the first Earth Day some 51 years ago. She has co-founded the award-winning Green Shalom Committee of her synagogue, Temple Emmanuel in Kensington, Maryland, and Shomrei Adamah of the Washington area. She's edited the group's Green Shalom Guide and currently serves as editor of the Jewish Earth Alliance newsletter. She's also on the Jewish Earth Alliance Steering Committee and works locally to reduce food waste and facilitates a Project Drawdown training course. So she's going to be speaking to us today about some of the work that the Jewish Earth Alliance does and how we can all get involved with that on a monthly basis, and how we can really use our power on Capitol Hill to get stuff done. Couple other things that are coming up here locally with our congregation. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m., there's a program called Building a Just Society, Defining the World We Want and Working Towards Making It Happen. This is going to have focus on racial justice, voting rights, mental health, homelessness, and immigration. Information on that's in the Macomb at Home. And on Thursday, April 22nd, Rabbi Ike will be in a panel called Taking Care of Our Planet, What Do the Sacred Texts Teach? Again, that's in Macomb at Home. And I want to put in a plug for next Sunday, all day long, the Jewish Climate Action Conference is going on, jewishclimate.org. There's going to be workshops focusing on carbon reduction, advocacy, spiritual resilience, soil, youth, and environmental justice. And we've got more stuff coming up. I'll just put a bunch of stuff in the chat. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dee and take it away.
Well, thanks, Jay. And thanks, Vanessa, for inviting me to do this. I'm going to show a short PowerPoint. I'm going to pull it up in 1 second. Here we go. Let's see. Slideshow, here we go. So for those of you who are new to this, Jewish Earth Alliance, we are working, we have been around for the last 2 years, started up in the spring of 2019 and founded by Mirala Goldsmith. Some of you may be familiar with her. She's got a doctoral degree in environmental psychology, and she's been doing climate advocacy work for many years and had moved from the New York area to Washington. She lives in Bethesda, Maryland now. And when she and I connected a couple of years ago, she was just starting to feel inspired to start the Jewish Earth Alliance. And I signed on very early on to help do what I could to work with her. I had just retired as a hospice chaplain and was looking to re-engage my Jewish environmental heart. So we are working to bring a more moral action on climate change to the Congress, and until March 12th, 2020, we were walking the halls of Capitol Hill, delivering letters from constituents around the country on an action alert that we would initiate each month. So now, since the pandemic lockdown started in March of last year, we have been doing it via email. And who knows what the next iteration is going to look like when we get through this pandemic time. Anyway, Let me advance here. So just a little background. Jane Fonda, some of you may know, came to DC at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020 for 3 months, specifically to do something called Fire Drill Fridays. And every Friday for those 3 months, she was coming down to Capitol Hill and doing a teaching at the rally. And she brought in amazing speakers. And this was one of the early ones. I got my picture taken with her, which was, and then I got arrested with her, which was quite remarkable. It was the first time I ever got arrested. So to be arrested with Jane Fonda was the cat's whiskers, is it? Anyway, it was great. So you're probably aware of this. It's just an informational slide about what happens with greenhouse gas increases in the atmosphere. You know, we do have an atmosphere that acts like a greenhouse. And when we emit various gases, they get trapped under it, and the sunlight hits it and warms up the surface and starts to do these long-term things that have been happening, like melting glaciers and as we've been seeing for a number of years, intensifying storms, hurricanes, fires, droughts, and the extremes get more extreme. Floods, if I didn't say floods. And so as climatologists say, you know, if you say, you know, one storm comes and it's, you know, it's a 500-year storm, and then the next year another one comes. The first one you might say it's just it's a weather event, but when the pattern starts to happen more and more over time, it's really because of the changing climate. One of the things I'd like to say about the changing climate is that the climate is always changing. So when you hear people say, stop climate change, that is not the correct way to look at it. It's to reverse the effects of what humans have been doing that have caused the climate to change in such rapid ways to increase the global temperature and to cause these extremes in all these events, these weather-related events, climate events. And at any time, if somebody has a question, because I can't see all of you, if you could just hold your question until after the slideshow, then I'll be able to go back to the gallery view and we can talk about your questions. So there are different kinds of ways to get engaged with reversing climate change. Reversing the effects of climate change, reversing, what do I want to say, global warming. And I want to talk about that in a minute, but the personal level, you know, at home, what we do, we can recycle things. We can reduce our food waste. We can walk more, bike more, take public transit more. Those are those personal kinds of actions that are important and clearly you can't even measure in terms of the big picture, the kind of stuff that needs to happen, has to happen on a much grander scale than the personal level. But I think we need all of these. On the community level, we might have a community recycling program or a composting program. We may have other things that we do, you know, in a community. We might have maybe a collection of homes in a neighborhood that decide to go solar. These are all part of the community-based solutions that are also important and yet still not nearly enough. Systemic efforts may include something like a divestment program where we're working with bigger, more influential bodies like corporations that have a much bigger influence on the outcomes of what they choose to do with their products and how they make their products and how they distribute them and all that. And this photograph about Divest Now is from the climate. It was one of the climate marches here in DC. I think it was about 6 months before the pandemic started. And then the fourth one is the legislative, and that's a picture of Mirala Goldsmith on the left and Rabbi Devorah Lynn, who are co-founders of the Jewish Earth Alliance. And if you come to the monthly network phone calls, which are the third Tuesday. So the next one's coming up this coming Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You'll have the opportunity to meet them both if you haven't already. And Devora organizes the network calls, and we always have, like you guys, we have a speaker every month to talk about whatever the current issue is that we're sending out our action alert about. Sometimes they're members of Congress, and sometimes they're staff members and other experts on a particular topic. Here's a photograph of the student climate strike march in DC. That was the two Septembers ago. And this is Muriela Goldsmith here, and Devora Lynn is over here. And Fred Dobb, if any of you know who he is, he's the rabbi of Adat Shalom congregation in Bethesda, Maryland, who's a major environmentalist for probably his whole life. His name, if it's not familiar to you, hopefully you'll get familiar with him, because he's a brilliant man who speaks very articulately on the subject. Again, another picture taken that same day, down on the hill, or actually down on the National Mall with the Capitol in the background. Just encouraging people to get involved and write letters to their representatives. So our vision of a collective Jewish action is to activate the community, mobilizing Jews to press Congress to act, and inspire Jews to get more involved in state and local action as well as the federal level, and to influence Jewish organizations by getting them to put climate change on their agenda, and to raise a moral voice with other faith communities. And you guys in the Midwest probably have Interfaith Power and Light chapter in Chicago. I'm not sure about it, but I would guess by now that, because they're pretty much all around the metropolitan areas around the country. And act in solidarity with young Jews who are taking action and who are clearly going to be bearing the brunt of the changing climate as the years roll by from now on. Oops, sorry. And then, as I mentioned, to pass comprehensive legislation protecting not only people and Earth, all living beings, you know, all the creatures that are animated, that live on planet Earth. And I also like to say, people a lot of times refer to Earth as ours, and I keep saying it's not ours. We are temporary residents here, and we are residents of God's creation, and it's really incumbent upon us to be stewards. That's where the Shomrei Adamah, keepers of the earth, idea came from. Well, this is kind of an interesting chart because there's we wonder sometimes about, you know, where our numbers as Jews is so small compared to the general population. But if you look at this chart and you see what our numbers are in relationship to the Quakers and the Unitarian Universalists, who are a minute fraction of our numbers, and yet we hear about Quaker activism and we hear about the Unitarian activists, and it's the Unitarians who Muriela Goldsmith modeled our program after when she started the Jewish Earth Alliance, because they already had a very vibrant activist arm doing work on climate. So their letter writing and their action alerts and all that, she didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It was already there for us. And here, just a montage of images of some of the letter writing efforts. Here's a group of people sitting at a picnic table, writing letters in their community. Here are some of our group at one of our letter deliveries on the Hill. Her name is Yvette. I'm trying to remember her last name. It's Congresswoman who's holding up these poster boards of letters written by kids on one of our action alerts. And it's so amazing because the legislators have said over and over again, they love getting letters from kids. particularly. They love getting letters from any of us, particularly when we put in a piece of our own personal story. It humanizes it, it's different than the one of 15,000 robot type emails that they get from a campaign. So having them personalized is a very, very important element in this whole process. It really does make a difference. This was at a tabling event at, I think it was the J Street conference a couple of years ago. And this was interesting because that same September day in 2019, I was down there, and you can't see my t-shirt, but this is the Shomrei Adamah t-shirt, which I'll show you an image of in a minute. And Mirla and I were there, and she said, let's go over to the Globe and get our picture taken with my poster. And as we walked over to the Globe, who was standing there but Elliot, my memory's going because I'm getting old, but anyway, from New York, one of the New York districts, who's now not reelected. So, but he was in office at the time, and she went right over to him and used the moment as a lobbying initiative. And she just said, we are promoting this legislation, and we want you to be a co-sponsor. And at the time, he had not signed on as a co-sponsor, but she just talked to him for a couple of minutes, and the next couple of days we got word that he had signed on as a co-sponsor. So you never know, right? Take advantage of the opportunities as they come up. So every month we have an action alert, and these are the recent ones, and there are more. You could go on our JewishEarthAlliance.org website and see all of them. And we try to time some of them like we did for Tu B'Shvat, that had to do with the Tongass National Forest. In January, we did because of the new administration coming in, talking about getting zero emission vehicles legislation. We focused on that. And then we did the Kigali Amendment, which I'm not going to go into, during the February action alert. Whoops, sorry about that. And then last month we focused on agriculture. So the new one that's coming out for May, that's just come out for May, we'll talk about it. It's about the American Jobs Plan. And it's really, really critical that we get support for this, because we only have the next six months or so to really push for this. As you all know by now, when the election season's happening, we're talking about the next Congress that'll be in 2022. People are already talking about who they're running for local offices, for state offices, federal congressional seats. And President Biden now has this window. We have a window between now and then to get stuff done. So it's really important that we get letters written. All right, let me advance this now. What's going on here? Okay. So here's another letter writing moment. And this happens to be Mirala's sister, who's a cantor locally in DC, and a couple of other wonderful members of the community. And so you can write letters anywhere, anytime, masked or unmasked, in groups or singly. It's much better to do it as a community, because there's an energy that's built when people are engaged in doing this. And you guys have such a great community. Look at how many of you are now. 42 people are on this call. I am so impressed. So
That's 42 screens. That's about 50, 60 people.
Oh my God, Vanessa, this is amazing. So the power behind a community like yours is immeasurable when it comes to stuff like this. And this is the way we're going to get work done. That has to get done, and has to get done really quickly. So this is actually, I need to update this now, because since this picture, this slide was put together, we now have a couple of new people added to the steering committee, because our work is growing. And we're doing this on no budget, I have to say. We're all volunteers. And we now have a young man who's taken over the monthly letter writing administration from Ed. This is Ed Koff, who's been doing it for the last 2 years, and he's now turned it over to this young man named Zeev Stern. So I will make a note that I have to update the slide so that I don't forget before the next time I do the slideshow. And so this is the email address for sending your email letters at jewishearthalliance.org. And this is my contact information if you want to get in touch with me directly, and my cell number, which you can text me on. And Devorah Lynn this is hers. So I'll give you a second if you want to either take a picture of the screen or jot down the information so you can have it for later. And now I'll advance it. I think that's that's just the end of the slideshow. That's a picture of a tree I took the picture of, and it represents the spiral of life and the seasons that we go through. Sometimes they are when we are in hibernation mode, and then when we come out of hibernation. I don't have a new spring photograph image up, but I will put one up just to show the changing seasonal images of our lives. So I'd like to open it up for questions and also to talk a little bit about the action alert. But before I get to the action alert, I want to see if there are any questions that have come up in the meantime.
We have one. from
Okay.
Lloyd Keene. To what extent does your organization involve itself in what you call systematic activity? That is, trying to make corporations more environmentally helpful.
Well, that's a really good question. As an organization, our focus has been on the federal legislative level. As far as corporate level, that's something that we encourage people to get involved with. And it's not something that we are putting energy into because of our narrow focus right now. And this is what we have created a niche for ourselves. And we'll often make reference to other groups who are doing that kind of work to get involved with. Any others? Marvin?
Yeah.
Marvin, you want to unmute?
Did you have your hand up? I don't know if he did.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions coming up in the chat box, or is that just that's the only one.
That's
the only one. Okay. So as far as the action alert for May, the American Jobs Plan just got announced a week ago or so. So this new action alert is kind of fresh off the books. And I'm going to try to summarize it a little bit. When I printed it out so that I could read it, not having to look at my computer screen, the print came out really tiny, and I haven't had a chance to enlarge it. So I'm going to do my best here. As you know, in the background of this is the $2 trillion recovery plan that was just announced to put people back to work. And almost half of this $2 trillion is being targeted to climate change related initiatives and priorities, which is remarkable. And it's wanting to bolster our nation's infrastructure in a way that will accomplish two major goals. One is to drive down greenhouse gas emissions and redress historic injustices by directing jobs and resources to communities most affected by climate change. So the plan is directed towards transportation, electricity, building sectors that are responsible for about 2/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions in this country. So those include transitioning to electric vehicles, as I mentioned before, upgrading the electrical grid, modernizing public transit, investing in clean energy research, eliminating fossil fuel subsidies, and requiring utilities to deliver a percentage of energy from renewables. And also to establish a clean energy standard and capping old oil and gas wells and creating a civilian conservation corps, 21st century civilian conservation corps, kind of modeled on the CCC back in FDR's time. And so, you know, there's more to this background. I won't go through the whole, all of the text from this. You can find this on our website. Why now is obviously because we have this opportunity with major funding that could really have a far-reaching positive effect on the future of our planet, our people, and our planet, not our planet, Earth. I think what I want to say is Earth is still going to go on. People may not. And I was an undergrad student back in the early 70s studying resource conservation. And one day I came into a lecture with my professor, and he wrote on the board, on the blackboard, when we still had blackboards, he wrote on the blackboard, survival is the exception, extinction is the rule. And I looked at that and I just sat there with my mouth agape, and I thought, well, oh God, what does that mean? And maybe it does mean that we are destined for some kind of an extinction as a human species at some point, but clearly we have been bringing this upon ourselves much faster than what might happen under natural circumstances. So if we want to stave this off and try to make a better future for our children, our grandchildren, and however many generations can still live on this planet, it is incumbent upon us to do what we can. There's a lot of Jewish perspective on this, you know, because especially at this time of the year when we read in the Torah about the building of the Mishkan, and we look at other building projects like the Tower of Babel and the cities that we built for Pharaoh. You know, after we left Egypt in our people's founding stories, you know, we were commanded to build a Mishkan, and when we build things, we have to build them that the things that we build have to reflect our values as Jewish people. So, you know, she wrote, at the pinnacle of the Tower of Babel were the builders themselves, and at the heart of Egypt was a single human being, a single man. And at most of those ancient temples, there was an idol, but at the center of the Mishkan was not a person or a statue. It was the tablets that, you know, that Moses brought down from Sinai, and the commandments that represent all the things that we are divinely implored to do or not to do, to be living here and to be good people and to aspire to be our best selves and to develop the qualities in us that we consider divine. So these are some of the reasons why it's really important for us as Jews to step into this activist mode and do this work on a level that can have much greater impact and influence. And, you know, we are people of values and stand up for our values and our traditions that teach these wise ways of living. And I have to say too that as an activist in this Jewish world on climate stuff, I remember back at Earth Day of 1990, the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, when it was the first time that there was a Jewish group on the National Mall teaching about the connection between Judaism and ecology. And people would come up to our table in this education tent area and they'd say, what does Judaism have to do with ecology? And it has everything to do with it. And it's just that our contemporary practices, particularly in the 20th century, kind of lost track of that because we were so consumed by the Holocaust and the aftermath, and just trying to get our lives as Jews back in some semblance of community and quote normalcy. So I think I'm blabbing on quite a long time, and I'd like to stop and encourage you to, if you can do it now, great, to get a piece of paper and something to write with and jot down. You don't even have to create your whole email right now, but to jot down a few things that you would like to include in the letter that you write to your Congress people. And I did not take time before this to check who your representatives are and your two senators. I usually try to do that, but I'm sorry, my life has been too crazy the last few days.
Well,
so.
I think we're very fortunate. I'll speak for myself. That's not the party line, but we live very blue. Our senators are Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth, and my congressman is Brad Schneider, and I don't know if that covers it. Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that covers everybody. But we do have a question.
Yeah.
And this is from Bill Rose. And I think automobiles are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. How do we make charging stations as plentiful as gasoline station? When will this occur? 10 years? And what's the cost?
Well, those are great questions too. And I'm no expert by any means. I would say that it's coming. I mean, the fact that General Motors has already come out and said that they were going to stop manufacturing gas vehicles by 2035. That's pretty remarkable. And other companies are going to be following suit. The charging station thing, I think, is just a matter of time, and it's going to keep it, upping production in the next several years. I know that where I live here in Tacoma Park, Maryland, I am a proud neighbor of the person who runs the local gas station that converted from gas to now only doing a charging station there. And I think he was the first in the country. So it's happening. And I think that people are starting to wake up. And part of our job as Jews is to help in this waking up process, to activate. I think you educate, you activate, or educate, motivate, activate, and educate again. I mean, the education has to happen continuously. As far as when, I can't answer that question. And how much it's going to cost, I can't answer that question. When my husband asked the question, okay, so we have all these electric vehicles. Where's electricity going to come from? How's it going to be made? Yeah, I see, Bob, you're shaking your head.
Bob is in city government. And we do have, Ross is the president of our board, but perhaps we could have a charging station at 1301 Clavey, where Macomb Soleil Lakeside is.
There you go.
And I've seen at grocery stores that they give preferential parking to the charging station. That in itself would make me get an electric car. I also have another question for you.
Sure.
I know that there's different Jewish environmental organizations like yours, Jewish Earth Alliance, Hazon, Shomer Adama. How do they work together, and do they differ in their approach?
Another great question. I will say that as in almost any effort that I've been involved in the environmental world, and I think this is true in other issue areas as well, there are always multiple groups that spring up to respond to an issue or issues. The environment is no different. And I happen to say I'm a Hazon Nick. I started involving myself with Hazon right after 9/11. Actually, a year before that, because that's when I first heard about it in the year 2000, when they had their first cross-country bicycle ride from Seattle to Washington, D.C. And I was jealous.
Tell us a little bit about Hazon.
Yes, so
Okay.
Hazon is another wonderful nonprofit that seeks to make the world a more sustainable place for Jews and everyone else as well. And they do it by education and activism and getting people outdoors, working on farming, education. They're based in New York and also in Connecticut at the Isabella Friedman Jewish Renewal Retreat Center, which has a farm called the Adamah Farm, and they have an intern program there for young people who are wanting to, there you go to there if you can ever go there. It is a beautiful campus. It is a great place for retreating with Jews and getting education. They have a great food program. They do their summer Adamah farm produce, and then they have these Sukkot gatherings. They do Shavuos. They do, they have programming throughout the year. My son worked there for 5 years, and I got to go there a number of times just to either do my bike rides or go to celebrate Shavuos or whatever. So Hazon is doing great stuff educationally. They've not been so much on the legislative activist advocacy front, but that group is very important. It's got a big voice now. And Shomer Adamah, that was started by Ellen Bernstein in Philadelphia in 1988, 89. She's, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's now a rabbi. She's up in, I think, Amherst, Massachusetts, and she's been writing books for years. And a year ago came out with a fabulous Haggadah for Pesach called The Promise of the Land. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's really focused on what is Pesach really based on in the first place. It's really the land. It's, we talk about our story about coming out of slavery and wandering in the wilderness and everything, but this land connection is a very central part of it. Some of you may know Dayenu, which is a very, very, very new Jewish environmental organization that started about 7-8 months ago, or last spring, maybe it's close to a year old. And they have a lot of funding, and they're trying to do something on a big scale around the country. They now have a staff person here in Washington, D.C. named Dahlia, who's going to be speaking at our network call on Tuesday evening. So if you want to know more about the Dayenu piece, tune in on Tuesday evening to the network call. And if you need there you go. It's just bubbling over now with efforts because the need is so great. And we're working on the relationships amongst us and how we work together going forward. And from my perspective, it's not about, this is my territory, this is your territory. This is a collective big picture thing that we have to work on. And however we find ourselves able to step into this picture and bring to bear whatever gifts we have and whatever energies we have, do it. Any other?
I'm actually going to call on Bob Benton. He messaged me, but he's in local government, and I think it's important to just hear what they're doing and that it's not quite as easy as we may think.
Right. Go for it, Bob.
There are effects to everything. When you say, for example, as one of our members said, all the charging can be done at home. Well, if you're out for the day and you need to charge and you go to a shopping center and you park in one of them, but then you go to shop, how do we rotate so that everybody has a chance? At the train station, somebody parks for the train, goes into town, they're at the charging station, they don't get back until 5 o'clock. Another effect is as we use less gas and gas stations close up, the gas tax revenue that the villages depend on disappears. That's another thing. When you're putting in charging stations in a parking lot, if you live in an apartment or a condo, what do? You don't have your own garage space. You're on the 4th floor. It's in the garage. You can't say you're in my space. I have a charging station. Get out. All of these things have an effect, and we're looking into it. We're trying, for example, we just are buying new police cars for the village. And somebody said, why not hybrids? And the answer is right at this point in time, when you have a hybrid police car and a scene of an accident, and the lights are flashing and the computer's on and the car cameras, the video cameras are on, and the radar is working, a hybrid car, the motor stops. And what do? So we are very interested in changing over, but we bought one to test, which is not on patrol duty, and we're going to see how that lasts. Everything is not as easy as it seems, but we're working on it. That's the answer.
Great. Thank you, Bob. And it's really important for us to get that kind of day-to-day kind of picture of how things are working or not working, or what kind of challenges are facing us that we have to think about.
Oh, and I forgot to add, the village is now dealing with, for their power, with a company that is shipping solar power in to us. We don't have to put anything on our roofs, but we are getting solar power from a wind farm, and ComEd, our power supplier, is supplying us with it. There's a price reduction that we're getting, and also we're getting energy credits that we donate back, which helps the environment as well.
That's great. And I want to say that Mirala's congregation, which is the one that I referenced before, that Rabbi Fred Dobb is the rabbi from, they had a very successful campaign 2 summers ago to enroll, I think, 60 families of their congregation to sign up for the then new solar array that was being set up through a local group called Community Solar Neighborhood Sun. And that organization, the Community Solar Neighborhood Sun, has been founded by a man named Gary Skolnick, who was a member of our Shomrei Adamah group back in the early 90s. And he's continued at it. And now there's this solar array that they set up that my family was able to sign into. And then they've got other projects going on in the Eastern Mid-Atlantic area. So if there's a way to get your community part of a collective solar community solar project, you could get all of you guys, all 50 some of you who are on this call, to be part of that. That's the community systemic change that would be fabulous. So,
well, I'm not sure. I know Jay wants to say something, and I'm channeling my ESP. It might be about solar panels.
Yeah. Well, that's not what I originally was going to say, but you segued into that really nicely. So Wednesday, the 28th, my wife Jenny is actually going to be on a live Zoom from a community solar installation in Northern Illinois. All of us who live within ComEd's territory have the ability to buy electricity from solar energy at a price that's less than ComEd. It's guaranteed to be less. You don't need to put the solar panels up on your roof. I put a link to that way at the beginning of the chat. And in fact, some of the suburbs are also having city sort of sponsored community solar programs going on as well. So you could check with your city government on that, or you could email me. I could tell you all about it. And then Dee, I just wanted to follow up because, we're talking about doing these letters. I know in the past you've wanted us to send handwritten letters directly to you. Do you want us to continue to do that, or should we send them direct to our legislators?
This is the way we're doing it. We still want letters to come to us through the email address that I gave you earlier. And I can tell you again, it's what is it? Letters. Oh, come on. I'll repeat what it is here if I can. I don't want to give you the wrong. letters@JewishEarthAlliance.org. They will go to this young, wonderful intern we have named Ziv Stern, and he will take them all and collect them together and send them to your legislators. We want to keep track of what's going on in that regard. And if you send your letters directly, which is certainly, I'm not going to say don't do that, but then we won't have the power of that collective. Let me get rid of this.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
thank you.
I put it back up.
You put it back. Oh, thank you. Okay. Glad you had the technology to do that. Yeah, so we would rather have you still send them via the JewishEarthAlliance.org link. Email.
We have another question or comment from Andy. Go ahead.
Hi, this is a great talk. I think what I want to say is that besides writing letters, well, first I have a question. Did you put this out already on your as an email? Because I think I've already done this. Was it? Did you have this out?
The action alert for May?
Yeah.
It just got posted in our newsletter, which went out Friday morning.
Yeah, I think I got to this quickly. I just didn't want to do it again. And
Good for you. Good for you.
Okay, I think it sounds very familiar. I think it's just a message that I get everywhere, and I think it's important to get it out, that we need to talk about this, that besides the legislation, we need to be talking about the environment, like we're talking about guns and the danger of these things. And I really get that message from lots of environmental organizations talk about it. And at the same time, Jewish teaching tells us that we cannot desist, that we can't be innocent bystanders. And I feel that talking is so accessible all the time. We can set an example. I just had a great experience saying to someone ahead of me in the grocery line, it's Earth Day. We're using so much plastic. She had so much. She said, oh, she's been worried about this, that. And then when she went to leave, she said, thank you. I really am glad you said something.
There you go.
So, it's out there if you can be nice and if you can set an example and not be an innocent bystander, and then the inconvenient truth of how we must change our lifestyles. I don't care how much we have to internalize this. And that's what we're
Exactly. Now I have two things to say to that. Thank you for bringing that up, Andy. One is, if you're not familiar with this, Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming, edited by Paul Hawken. This book came out in 2017. You can go to the website. You don't have to buy the book. It's like my Bible, but it's drawdown.org. And there are updates to this 2017 book. What this did, they brought together researchers and scientists from around the globe to look at what kinds of actions do we need to take to to reverse global warming. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not about maybe I didn't mention, it's not about slowing things down. It's about reversing to get carbon back into the ground. And Paul Hawken, in one of the videos that he talks in, says an analogy which I think is very apt. He said, when people talk about let's slow this down, he said it's analogous to Thelma and Louise just taking a little longer to still go off the cliff. So the teachings are online, the videos and all that kind of stuff you can access that way. I am now a facilitator of the Drawdown trainings. And so there's a group based in San Francisco called the Pachamama Alliance, which has developed a curriculum to teach the Drawdown work and to get local community groups acting in action on these major problems. They ranked 80 solutions by how much they could sequester carbon by 2050. And I just want to put out a question to see if you're not familiar, don't answer if you already know this. If you're not familiar with the Drawdown hierarchy of solutions from this project, what do you think is the highest use or highest producer of greenhouse gases that really needs to be reversed? What do you think is the highest one?
Put it in the chat. Let's see what you got.
Yeah.
commercial office space.
Okay. What else?
Bill Rosen said before cars.
Okay.
He said it again.
Jay, you're gonna cheat. You can't cheat.
We have meat eating, meat industry, airplanes, cows. Oh, this is a very knowledgeable group.
All right. So I'm going to tell you, because I didn't guess what the first one was. First one is refrigeration. Why? Anybody want to guess why refrigeration is the top? Put it in the chat.
I would have never in a million years guessed refrigeration.
All right, but think of why do you think that might be? Freon?
Freon.
And why? Because the planet is warming. We need more air conditioning in places where, we already have air conditioning. God bless air conditioning. I'm very grateful because I can't stand my tolerance for the heat and the humidity in the summer months here in DC is terrible. People in the tropics who are getting hotter and hotter, people in developing countries that know that this is available elsewhere, they want it too. And we've had these problems with escaping freon gases and all that kind of stuff, and the chlorinated hydrocarbons and everything else. In the top 10 of this list, and the list may have varied now because they've just recently done an update, which I haven't studied yet. But of the top, say, 15, 4 of them are land use. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are food related. These are done in sectors like materials, transportation, and all that sort of thing. This was one of the most surprising things to me. Number 6 and number 7, if you added them together, they'd be at the top of the list. And one of them was educating girls, and the second one was family planning. Anyway, it's a very eye-opening thing. And if you have a chance to take the 5-session drawdown class in your neck of the woods, I highly encourage it. And there was one other thing I wanted to draw attention to besides the drawdown project. It'll come if it's meant to come. Oh, Andy said it gets us to the Kigali Amendment. Andy, do you want to speak to that?
I
yeah,
I only know about it from being on the call, but what I remember is that they outlawed the chemical that refrigerates, and we came up with another one that's just as bad. And there's something with ammonia, and this is an international situation that we can't really that has to be taken to the international scene. And it's so obscure, people don't even know what it means. So
I didn't know about it either.
Yeah.
And it was an amendment that was brought up years ago and then couldn't go anywhere. It's an international treaty between the United States and Canada, and because it was an international treaty, only the Senate could ratify it. And then that was the subject of our action alert in February because there was a deadline coming up. And thank you, Andy, for having contributed your voice to that. Jim notes about wasting food, and food waste, I think, is number 3 on this list. What the drawdown, yeah, it's number 3 on the list. Food waste accounts, I think, for about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is extraordinary and horrifying. I like what Jim wrote. The drawdown book looks great on a coffee table.
The one thing I want to add, because I live in Bob Benton's district, we just got a new waste recycling, and now we have compost. And I see how much every week we fill that, and we refill the recycle bin. So I'm happy that my government is helping me be more conscientious.
That is fabulous. I have to say, in my experience with I took the drawdown training in the fall of 2019. And it was right here in a few blocks from my house. So I got to meet people in my community who I didn't know before. And a few of us picked food waste and kind of reducing waste altogether, lowering our consumption habits. We picked that as our main topic that we wanted to work on. So we kind of made ourselves a little mini community, and we've been meeting weekly since then. And we've been putting on forums on reducing food waste. Now, since the pandemic started, putting on a forum is something that everybody seems to be doing. And so we're about to have our second one in a couple of weeks. So we've gotten local speakers who are experts on composting and what you can do in your own homes, what you can do in your community to reduce food waste, and how we might influence some of the larger consumers of food, our purveyors and restaurants and institutional users and all that kind of stuff. And also at the Isabella Friedman Jewish Retreat Center, Chazon ran a, they have food conferences periodically, and they had one that I went to some years ago. And their educator was talking about how they were working with school-age kids, religious school groups that would come to the retreat center and spend a few days for outdoor ed there. How they would get them in the dining hall to measure their food waste. After they had a meal, they would measure it, they'd weigh it, and they had a song that they would sing about the pisolet, which was the word about their food waste. And then they had these competitions for how to reduce their food waste. So it became a game. It was really great because kids really got into it. And there are all these kinds of things that we could be doing to help promote this in a way that's positive and kind of life affirming. Anyway.
I totally completely agree. We have a lot of good chat in the chat, including perhaps we'll do something at Macomb with this drawdown site that you brought to our attention. And we're wrapping up here. If we have any other questions, I think that by talking about it and giving you a chance to speak, we have different committees, we're very involved, just keeps it at the top of our list. And I know that Rabbi Sarada has said there's many things we keep it, you have these long lists, we're concerned about politics and we're concerned about elections and voting, but we just have to keep climate change. We have to keep our environment at the tippy top of that list.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that we're all going to be working on for the rest of our lives. There's no question about it. Oh, the other piece that I wanted to mention before we end, I now remember, is Joanna Macy. If you're not familiar with Joanna Macy, she's a nonagenarian. She's now 91, almost 92, lives in Berkeley, a mile from my son. I got to interview her and write a piece about her that was published a year ago. And she's written a bunch of books. She is a deep ecologist, a Buddhist scholar, and a systems theorist. She got her PhD in that. And she put together, she designed and crafted a training program called The Work That Reconnects. Go to her website. Maybe Vanessa, you'll find her website and you can post that as well. Because what she does, and I'm happy to do this for you sometime if you want, to give you a mini workshop on the work that reconnects, because I do that as well. It's really important because what it does is it gives a community of people an opportunity to express the despair that we are having about the kind of stuff that we're seeing and having to deal with now, climate wise, and then to be able to shift our perspective and find the places where we have our unique gifts to offer in the work that going forward that we need to do to help turn things around if we can. We don't really know how this is going to play out, she says, and I believe her. She said, we don't really know. We are making predictions. All we can do is what we can do, and to do it in community, because doing it ourselves alone is siloing ourselves and not replenishing our energies for doing the hard work.
Andy, I see you have. Go ahead.
I did it differently. Oh, I took my thing down. I just wanted to mention that while we focus on drawing down our carbon footprint and that biodiversity loss is happening, and it's right up there. We can't, it's just rapidly, and plastic pollution that's filling the ocean. I just read last week that we are all ingesting enough plastic a week to make a credit card.
Oh, well,
We have choices. You can make choices every day. Everything you buy means something. And
It's right. It's like voting. You know, every time you buy something, it's like voting for something.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Who do you want to give your money to?
right.
thank you.
And I know that Susan Wellick said this to me privately. She said, how can I make this program available to my children? And I think that is so great. We're recording this. Susan, I'll try to remember to send you the YouTube link if you'll see me during the week, and you'll just email me and say, where's that link? And Floyd, did you want to say anything about investing? And we have someone who on our Zoom today who works really with responsible investing.
Yeah, let me just say that social investing, the environment is one of the top issues. There's no question. Everyone here should probably be aware of a group called J-Lens. They're out of San Francisco, and they're the premier Jewish group in pressuring corporations on Jewish issues. One issue is Israel, but the environment is near the top of their list too. They do a lot of great work in this area. If you want to look at their website, they're called J-Lens, J-L-E-N-S. So there are Jewish groups working the corporate area, because if you get corporations to address the environment, you can have a major, major effect on the overall issue.
Floyd, I put their link in our chat, and this is what it looks very interesting. So people can take a look at that. We're rounding out the hour here. If anyone else has I'm going to put on my gallery view so I can see if anyone is waving at me. It's great to see everyone. Dee, we can't thank you enough. And I would also like to call out Jay for hooking us up with Jewish Earth Alliance, and everyone on this call who does so much work, Andy and Diane, and we're so appreciative of what everybody does in their own specter. And you're getting some thank yous. I would be remiss if I did not say, oh, that's the wrong one. I'll put it up there. We do have a Tikkun Olam program. Diane, do you want to unmute for a minute, and I'll get the.
Yeah, well, I think Jay did a good job of announcing that tomorrow night is our third in the 3-part session of Building a Just Society. We are going to have partners from all of our Jewish social action partners speak. So we'll be covering a lot of topics. There'll be a lot of opportunities to get involved. So look at Macomb at Home, and I think Vanessa put up the link for tomorrow night for the registration. So we hope to see you 7 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
And don't forget to order your lox boxes for next Sunday's pickup.
Right. Because you're going to want to eat that lox box while you listen to Jim Kenny. We've heard him before. We'll hear him again. So, and please share the link with friends and family. Rabbi, anything else you wanted to say? Rabbi Ike?
I want to thank Dee Herman. It's great to have you on our call. And please, the next time you see my friend Warren Stone, say hello.
I was just there at his house this morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will tell. Are you related to Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry's my brother.
I had a feeling. Well, I'll say hello to him too.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to
talk
say.
to him. I don't talk to Warren that often.
Okay.
So, but please give him my best. And thank you for being here. And I want to encourage everyone to come to the Interfaith panel on Earth Day on Thursday evening. We've got representatives from 6 different faith groups talking about their connection to the environmental movement. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I can't speak for myself, but I think the other 5 people are going to be really great. So.
Okay.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. And I just want to applaud you and all of the people that came onto the call for showing up and for doing all the work that you're doing locally and nationally. And keep up. Know that we're here. We got your back, and keep writing your personal sagas on your letters so that they get particularly attended to when your legislators see them.
Thank you. Thank you for having our back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
And
Dee. Great
Thank you so
program.
much.
Wonderful.
Thank
program.
you. Wonderful program. Thank you.
But you're right, we're heading into a cycle, I think, of continuing and possibly escalating conflict.